Welcome to this episode where we are going straight into one of the most uncomfortable but necessary conversations of modern life. The hidden demotivators that quietly drain your focus, your drive, your confidence, and your direction. Stand to this very carefully. Most people are not lazy. Most people are not incapable. Most people are not weak. Most people are not born without ambition. What happens is much more subtle. Life slowly trains people to disconnect from their own energy. Outcome pressure, comparison, family expectations, cultural conditioning, limited resources, fear of failure, wrong career choices, and the constant hunger for external approval start shaping the mind. And one day, you wake up and realize that you are still functioning, still working, still studying, still parenting, still leading, still creating, still showing up, but internally something has gone quiet. That quietness is dangerous. Because demotivation does not always look like quitting. Sometimes demotivation looks like doing everything expected of you while no longer feeling connected to your own life. Sometimes it looks like having a good job but no inner fire. Sometimes it looks like being a responsible parent but quietly feeling lost. Sometimes it looks like being a creator with ideas but no courage to publish. Sometimes it looks like being an executive with authority but no clarity. Sometimes it looks like being a young adult with potential, but no direction. So today, I want to take you into the real architecture of demotivation. Not shallow motivation. Not wake up early and grind harder motivation. Not another slogan. I'm talking about the psychological forces that quietly break a human being's momentum from the inside. The first demotivator is excessive focus on outcomes. This is one of the biggest traps of modern life. From childhood, you are trained to chase results. Grades, marks, rank, salary, job title, promotion, business growth, social approval, followers, recognition, validation. Everybody tells you to focus on the result. And yes, results matter. Let us be honest, you cannot live a serious life by pretending outcomes do not matter. But here is where the damage begins. When your entire identity becomes attached to the outcome, your mind stops learning and starts fearing. You no longer study to understand. You study because you are terrified of failure. You no longer work to build mastery. You work because you are afraid of being judged. You no longer create because your voice matters. You create because you need approval. You no longer lead because you want to serve a vision. You lead because your status is at stake. That is not motivation. That is pressure wearing the mask of ambition. And pressure can push you for some time. It can make you perform, it can make you compete, it can make you prove people wrong. But pressure alone cannot build a fulfilled life. Eventually, pressure becomes anxiety. Anxiety becomes exhaustion. Exhaustion becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes guilt. And guilt becomes demotivation. If your motivation depends only on immediate results, you will collapse every time life delays your reward. So you have to shift the question. Instead of asking only, "What did I achieve?" you also ask, what am I becoming? Am I becoming sharper? Am I becoming more disciplined? Am I understanding myself better? Am I learning how to handle delay? Am I building judgment? Am I building emotional strength? Am I becoming more capable even before the world claps for me? That is where real motivation begins, because the process is not a punishment you tolerate until success arrives. The process is where your internal structure is built. The second demotivator is lack of self-understanding. This one is brutal because many people spend years trying to become successful in a life that does not match their personality. You may be highly creative, but you are forcing yourself into a rigid environment that kills originality. You may be deeply analytical, but you are trapped in chaotic emotional spaces that drain your nervous system. You may be people-oriented, but you are isolated in work that gives you no human connection. You may be reflective, sensitive, intuitive, or exploratory, but you keep comparing yourself to people whose temperament is completely different from yours. And then you blame yourself. You say, "I am not disciplined." You say, "I am not motivated." You say, "I am confused." You say, "Maybe I am not good enough." But maybe the real issue is not your capacity. Maybe the real issue is misalignment. Self-understanding is not a luxury. It is not something only spiritual people, psychologists, or personality test lovers should care about. Self-understanding is a survival tool. If you do not understand your own personality, you will borrow someone else's ambition. If you do not understand your strengths, you will keep fighting battles you were never designed to win. If you do not understand your emotional triggers, you will keep calling burnout weakness. If you do not understand your natural rhythm, you will mistake misfit for failure. This is especially important for parents, teachers, mentors, leaders, and young adults. Because many young people are not demotivated because they lack intelligence. They are demotivated because they have been pushed into goals that do not match their inner design. And many professionals are not disengaged because they lack work ethic. They are disengaged because their life has become externally successful but internally inaccurate. So if you want motivation, do not just ask, "What should I do?" Ask, "Who am I when I am most alive? What kind of problems energize me? What kind of environments drain me? What kind of work makes me lose track of time? What kind of responsibility makes me stronger? What kind of success actually feels meaningful to me?" When your goals align with your nature, effort becomes cleaner. You still have to work hard. You still need discipline. You still face obstacles, but your effort no longer feels like self-betrayal. The third demotivator is being carried away by people close to you. This is emotionally complicated because the people closest to you may genuinely love you. Your parents, friends, relatives, teachers, partners, mentors, and peers may all want the best for you. But wanting the best for you does not always mean knowing what is true for you. Many people lose their motivation because they live under borrowed expectations. They choose a career because the family approves it. They choose a degree because society respects it. They choose a lifestyle because their peers admire it. They stay in places where their soul is shrinking because leaving would disappoint someone. They silence their own direction because they do not want to appear selfish, rebellious, ungrateful, or unrealistic. But listen carefully. If you keep abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, your motivation will eventually collapse. You may gain approval, but you will lose ownership. And once you lose ownership of your life, every effort becomes mechanical. This does not mean you reject advice. That is not maturity. Good advice matters. Experience matters. Guidance matters. But there is a difference between receiving advice and surrendering your internal authority. You can listen respectfully without giving someone else the final authorship of your life. At some point, you have to ask yourself, whose life am I living? Am I choosing this because it is true for me or because I am afraid of disapproval? Am I following wisdom or am I obeying fear? Am I respecting my family or am I outsourcing my destiny? Am I being responsible or am I hiding behind responsibility because I'm afraid to choose? That is a hard question, but it is necessary. Because if your life only makes sense from the outside, you will eventually feel empty on the inside. The fourth demotivator is your personal circumstances. Your socioeconomic status, family background, culture, education, financial condition, environment, and exposure all shape your motivation. This is real. We cannot pretend everyone starts from the same place. Some people grow up with resources, networks, confidence, and permission. Others grow up with pressure, limitation, emotional instability, lack of exposure, and survival anxiety. If you come from a background where money was always tight, dreaming big may feel irresponsible. If nobody around you has built the kind of life you want, ambition may feel unrealistic. If your culture has strong ideas about what is acceptable, respectable, or safe, you may suppress your own possibilities before they even mature. This is how circumstances become psychological ceilings. They do not just limit your options externally, they shrink your imagination internally. You stop asking, what is possible, and start asking, what is allowed? You stop exploring your potential and start negotiating with fear. But here is the radical truth. Your circumstances influence your starting point. They influence your access. They influence your speed. They influence your exposure. They influence your emotional pressure. But they do not deserve the final authority over your future. You may need a different route. You may need more time. You may need mentorship. You may need to learn outside formal systems. You may need to build slowly. You may need to earn while learning. You may need to take a practical path instead of a romantic leap. But do not confuse difficulty with impossibility. There is a difference between acknowledging reality and worshiping limitation. A mature mind does not deny obstacles. but a mature mind also refuses to turn obstacles into identity. The fifth demotivator is limited resources. This is one of the most practical and painful realities. Dreams need resources. They need money, time, education, networks, tools, emotional support, social exposure, and sometimes simply a stable environment. When these are missing, demotivation becomes understandable. It is easy for someone with access to say, just follow your dreams. But if you do not have money for training, if you do not have a mentor, if you do not have the right network, if your family depends on you, if you do not have language confidence, if you do not have exposure, if you do not have emotional safety, then every dream feels heavier. But limited resources do not always mean no path. They mean your path has to be designed differently. This is where resourcefulness becomes more important than resources. You ask, what do I have right now? What can I learn for free? Who can I approach? What small skill can I build? What one project can I create? What one habit can give me leverage? What one connection can open a door? What one decision can move me one step forward? Do not compare your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 10. Some people start with a platform, some start with pressure, some start with money, some start with hunger, some start with family support, some start with family resistance, some start with confidence, some start with confusion. Your timeline may be different, your route may be different, your pace may be different, but different does not mean defeated. If you have limited resources, your first job is not shame. Your first job is strategy. The sixth demotivator is following external authority more than internal authority. This is one of the deepest causes of demotivation. From childhood, you are taught to look outside for permission. Parents decide what is safe. Teachers decide what is correct. Society decides what is respectable. Employers decide what is valuable. Culture decides what is acceptable. Algorithms decide what gets attention. Groups decide what gets validation. And slowly, you forget how to hear yourself. Now, external authority is not always bad. You need guidance. You need structure. You need mentors. You need experts. You need feedback. A person who rejects all authority becomes arrogant and unstable. But a person who depends only on external authority becomes internally weak. The problem begins when you cannot choose unless someone approves. You cannot trust your interest unless society validates it. You cannot change direction unless your family understands it. You cannot take a risk unless the world guarantees success. You cannot believe in your path unless others clap first. That is not clarity. That is dependence. And dependence drains motivation because your energy gets split. One part of you wants something. Another part keeps asking if it is allowed. One part knows the truth. Another part negotiates with fear. One part wants growth. Another part wants approval. When your life is internally divided, motivation cannot remain strong. Internal authority means you listen, reflect, evaluate, and then choose from your own examined judgment. It is not impulsiveness. It is not rebellion for drama. It is not rejecting everyone. It is the ability to say, I have heard the world, but I will not abandon myself. That is adulthood. And that is where motivation becomes powerful again, when your actions feel internally authorized. Now, here is the real question. What is quietly draining you? Not what looks wrong from the outside, not what people assume about you, not what society labels as laziness. I am asking you to look deeper. Are you demotivated because you lack discipline, or because you are chasing goals that do not fit your personality? Are you confused because you are incapable, or because too many voices are living inside your decision-making? Are you tired because your dream is impossible, or because you have been carrying other people's expectations for too long? Are you stuck because you have no potential, or because your environment has trained you to think too small? Are you procrastinating because you are lazy, or because the task represents a life you no longer believe in? These questions matter because the wrong diagnosis creates the wrong solution. If you call misalignment laziness, you will punish yourself instead of correcting your path. If you call fear practicality, you will stay stuck and feel mature about it. If you call social approval responsibility, you will keep performing a life that drains you. If you call limited exposure destiny, you will never test the real size of your ability. This is why motivation is not hype. Motivation is alignment. Real motivation is not just excitement. Excitement comes and goes. Inspiration comes and goes. Praise comes and goes. Even success becomes normal after some time. Real motivation is built when your goals, personality, values, effort, environment, and internal authority are not constantly fighting each other. When you are aligned, struggle still exists. But the struggle feels meaningful. You still get tired, but you do not feel fake. You still face delay, but you do not lose yourself. You still meet resistance, but you know why you are walking. That is the difference. So if you are a creator, ask yourself, am I creating from my real voice? Or am I imitating what gets attention? If you are an executive, ask yourself, am I leading with clarity, or am I simply managing expectations? If you are a parent, ask yourself, am I helping my child understand their nature, or am I projecting my fear onto their future? If you are a young adult, ask yourself, am I building my own direction, or am I living inside borrowed ambition? If you are someone who feels demotivated, do not rush to shame yourself. Audit yourself. Where am I too attached to outcomes? Where am I disconnected from my own personality? Where am I obeying people close to me instead of listening to my own inner direction? Where have my circumstances shaped my imagination? Where am I using lack of resources as a permanent excuse instead of building a smarter strategy? Where am I waiting for external permission when I already know what I need to do? This is not comfortable work, but it is liberating work. Because once you name the real demotivator, you stop attacking yourself blindly. You stop saying, I am lazy. You start saying, I'm misaligned here. You stop saying, I'm not capable. You start saying, I need a better route. You stop saying, life is impossible. You start saying, my current conditions are difficult, but they are not the final definition of my future. That shift changes everything. You do not get your drive back by pretending everything is fine. You get your drive back by telling the truth. Tell the truth about what you want. Tell the truth about what drains you. Tell the truth about whose approval you are still chasing. Tell the truth about the fears you inherited. Tell the truth about the life you are performing but not fully living. Tell the truth about the dream you buried because it felt inconvenient, unrealistic, or unacceptable. And then start again. Not dramatically, not recklessly, but honestly. Your path does not have to look like everyone else's path. Your timeline does not have to match everyone else's timeline. Your motivation does not have to be loud to be real. But your life must be yours. Because when your direction becomes honest, your energy begins to return. And when your energy returns, you stop merely surviving inside responsibility. You begin building with clarity. That is the real work. Not just becoming more productive, not just becoming more disciplined, not just becoming more successful, but becoming more internally aligned, more self-aware, more courageous, and more honest about the forces that shape your life. If this episode made you think differently about motivation, focus, direction, parenting, leadership, creativity, or personal growth, then like, share, and subscribe to the channel. For more raw, deep, incisive reflections on human psychology, leadership, motivation, and the way forward in the 21st century, subscribe to Leadership Notes on YouTube. And if you want to continue this conversation in written form, follow my LinkedIn newsletter, where I go deeper into the ideas, patterns, and psychological tools that help you understand yourself, lead better, and think beyond the common narratives. Because your life is not just about working harder. It is about seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you can finally move with power.